The wind screamed across the Dakota prairie like a wounded beast, driving sand into every crack and corner of Elias' heart as homestead. The land stretched out wide and unforgiving, nothing but brittle grass and swirling dust devils moving like haunted spirits. At 43, Elias stood on his porch with the rigidness of a man carved by years of struggle. His face was cut deep by sun and wind, his jaw set hard, his heart heavier than the endless sky above. 3 harsh winters had passed since fever took Anna, leaving him with only cattle, sagging fences, and a silence so deep it felt alive. The hired ranch hands came and went, but come sundown Elias faced nothing but the lonely cry of prairie wolves. Nights were always the cruelest. He often sat at the rough kitchen table, staring at Anna's faded shawl still hanging by the door, the house so quiet it seemed to hold its own breath. That gnawing emptiness was what finally pushed him to write a letter. Elias wants to give in to romantic notions, but plain necessity had outmatched his pride. A matrimonial bureau out in Chicago promised confidential matches for hard-working frontier men. Elias' hand had been steady but plain as he wrote his request. Slim, respectful, capable. A woman who could keep a house standing when winter snows pressed in. A woman who would balk when drought dried up the well or when a blizzard trapped them for a week. He imagined her slight and soft-spoken. Someone who would slip quietly into the hollow Anna left behind. This one's tea about love, Elias told himself. Love was for poets and church sermons. This was survival. The bureau wrote back. 2 months, they said. 2 months, and your bride will be on the train. That thought carried Elias through endless chores. He fixed the gate that dragged in the dirt, straightened the pantry shelves, even oiled the squeaky hinges that had nagged him for years. Every nail he hammered was a reminder that change was coming. He even let himself picture another woman as voice in these rooms, another pair of footsteps moving through the house. But in truth it was Anna's voice that haunted him, not some imagined stranger. When the day came, Elias put on his cleanest shirt, starched stiff, until it scratched his neck. He rode into town early and waited at the station, pacing so much the station master finally told him to sit or leave. When the train groaned to a stop, Elias scanned the crowd. Merchants, ranch hands, a minister clutching his Bible, all stepping off in a rush. His chest tightened as the crowd thinned. Had she changed her mind? Had the bureau lied? Then he saw her. She was the last to descend, stepping carefully, clutching a battered case to her chest. Elias' stomach dropped. This woman was nothing like the picture in his mind. She was slight wands and delicate. She was solidly built. Her dress pulled snug around her figure. Her face was handsome, her storm-gray eyes level under a tumble of dark curls. She looked like someone who had already fought through a hard life and won. "Heart?" she said, her voice carrying a faint Irish music but sharpened with city steel. "Miss Callahan," Elias managed, removing his hat. He took her case, it was heavier than it looked, and led her toward the wagon. She climbed up without waiting for his hand, arranging her skirts with a motion that told him she did need help. The buckboard groaned under their weight as he flicked the reins, and they rolled out of town. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. "The bureau said you were a widower," she said at last. 3 years this spring. "I'm sorry for your loss." He only nodded. Words seemed too sharp for the air between them. "I understand you had requirements," she said finally, her chin lifting. Elias flushed. His letter had been very clear. "I am 28, she went on. "I came west because I wanted more than what Boston was willing to give me. That is the truth, Mr. Hart. I am not slim, and I want to apologize for that." Her words landed harder than he expected. He kept his eyes on the rutted road, gripping the reins so tightly his knuckles whitened. When they reached the homestead, his old dog, Scout, came bounding out. Maeve crouched and held out a hand, and Scout wagged his tail like he'd just found a long-lost friend. Something twisted in Elias' chest at the sound of her soft voice praising the dog. It was the same tone Anna used to use. Inside, Maeve took in the plain furnishings and clutter without a word. Her hand brushed against Anna. Shawl still hanging by the door, but she did move it. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves and asked where the pans were. "I'll check the cattle," Elias muttered, retreating. "Dinner will be waiting," she replied simply. He saddled his horse and rode hard into the fading light, leaving the chimney smoke curling behind him. The first sign of real life the place had shown in months, and he could bring himself to look back. The first week felt like living with a thunderhead hanging over the house. Every morning Elias woke to the sound of Maeve's steady steps. Breakfast was always ready, real food, not beans and stale bread. Maeve worked from dawn until dark, hauling water, scrubbing years of dust from the walls, mending everything from clothes to curtains. She chopped wood as well as any ranch hand. Sometimes Elias found himself watching her. The strong curve of her arms as she kneaded bread, the way her hair curled damply against her cheek when she hauled water. She was everything useful, but not what he ordered. One night, thinking she could hear, he muttered under his breath, "I asked for a wife, not a ranch hand." Her hands stilled over her mending. "Would you rather a dainty lady who faints when the pump freezes?" she asked without looking up. "Because that one to keep your cattle alive." Her words stung. He turned away, cheeks burning. "Maybe you should decide what you really want, Elias Hart," she added quietly. In town, the whispers had already started. At the Mercantile, Mrs. Turner gave Maeve a slow once-over. "So you're Elias, bride," she said with a smirk. "Sturdy sort, aren't you?" Maeve smiled, sugar-sweet, and said, "I've always believed a woman should be built for the work she's meant to do." "Would you agree, Mrs. Turner?" The smirk slid right off the woman's face. Elias almost smiled but held it back, hating that he felt grateful. By Saturday night, the tension snapped like a dry twig. Maeve had bathed and hung a blanket for privacy. When she came out, cheeks pink, hair curling against her face, Elias nearly forgot to breathe. She wore a soft nightgown, and he fled to the barn like a boy. Sunday came, bringing Reverend Dixon to marry them prop. Maeve wore a deep blue dress that hugged her frame, her hair neatly pinned. She looked like a woman who had faced storms and survived. The vows were quick. When Elias slipped Anna's ring onto her finger, something in him twisted. "You may kiss your bride," the preacher said. He leaned in for a chaste peck, but Maeve turned and their lips met full. Her mouth was warm, steady, and Elias felt a strange pull in his chest. "Well, Elias," said his neighbor, grinning, "hope your marriage bed stronger than your fence posts." Maeve's cheeks flushed, but she did lower her head. That night, Elias stood awkwardly in the parlor. "You should move your things into the bedroom," he said, "if that's what you want." Maeve said softly, her eyes steady. "It's what? As expected." Her face flickered with fear, hurt, and something else, but she nodded. Later, in the narrow bed, Elias lay stiff as a board. Maeve turned her back to him. "I know I am not what you wanted," she whispered. The words sliced him open. He wanted to say otherwise, to comfort her, but pride kept him still. "We'll make do," he said at last. Her sigh filled the darkness. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was pale blue, the next it turned a sickly green, wind howling like a banshee. Elias had been out mending fence when the dust swallowed the horizon. Through the haze he saw Maeve outside, wrestling the barn doors. "Get inside," he shouted, but she ignored him, pointing at the chicken coop. The door had blown open, hens flying everywhere. They worked side by side, forcing birds back inside, shoving sacks against the barn doors. By the time they stumbled into the house, coughing and bruised, Maeve's forehead was bleeding. "You are hurt," Elias said, reaching for her before he could think. "It's nothing," she said, but her eyes softened when he pressed a wet cloth to the cut. They sat together for hours, listening to the storm batter the walls. "Why did you come west?" Elias asked finally. Maeve, his hands tightened around the cup she held. "My parents died. My brother inherited the house. His wife called me a burden. Too old, too big for suitors, so I answered the ad." Elias stared at her across the firelight, his chest aching. "And you ended up with a man who asked for the opposite of you," he said. "At least you admit it," she replied quietly. That honesty became a bridge between them. When Elias twisted his knee fixing fence posts, Maeve became his strength hauling water, tending the herd, even riding the range. "Would you rather lose cattle or swallow your pride?" she asked. He had no answer. Neighbors began to notice. Women sought her advice, children adored her, and the men who once smirked fell silent when they saw her split logs or gentle a skittish horse. One night, the sound of horses woke Elias. Rustlers. He reached for his rifle, but Maeve was already at the door, loading the shotgun. "They'll take the best stock," she said. "Stay inside," he ordered. "Like hell," she shot back. Outside, 4 men circled the barn, torches in hand. "That's far enough," Maeve called, shotgun steady. The men laughed. One fired, The bullet striking Elias in the shoulder. Maeve roared his name, stepping in front of him like a shield. She fired, blasting the leader, his hat clean off. "You want these horses? Come through me," she shouted. The men cursed, then fled into the dark. When silence fell, Maeve dropped to her knees, binding Elias' wound with shaking hands. "You could have died," she whispered. "So could you," he rasped. Her eyes glistened. "I am not what you wanted, Elias, but I'm here. I'll fight for this place, for you." He caught her hand, rough and warm. "I see that now. I was a fool to want less." From that night, something shifted. When winter came early, trapping them inside, they found themselves laughing together, sharing stories by the fire. One night, Elias touched her cheek and kissed her not from duty but because he wanted to. She kissed him back, and the walls between them finally fell. Months later, one spring night, after too much wine and laughter, the old bed collapsed beneath them with a tremendous crack. Rancher wanted a slim bride. Elias laughed breathlessly, got one who broke his bed. Maeve buried her face in his chest, laughing until tears came. "Let them talk," Elias said, pulling her close. "Let the whole prairie know I got the best woman a man could ever ask for." Years passed. The ranch thrived. Children's laughter filled the rooms. Neighbors came to Maeve for wisdom, to Elias for counsel. He'd asked for a slim, quiet wife. What he got was Maeve Callahan, strong, fiery, full of life, a woman who broke his bed and rebuilt his world. And Elias thanked God every day that the prairie had given him not what he wanted, but what he truly needed. The oak bed they built together never broke. Their laughter, their love, and their story echoed across the wide Dakota prairie, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come when expectations are shattered and hearts finally learn to see clearly. What do you think about Elias and Maeve so far? Should he trust her strength or keep holding on to the shadow of Anna? Pause here for a second. Share your thoughts in the comments. I really love reading what you all think. And if this story is pulling you in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next on the Heart Ranch.